All right. Good.
Depends on how long the meeting lasts.
You guys should be on.
We got 5 minutes.
Sure.
Okay, well, let's get the work session started, I guess. We don't need to do anything formally for that, I'll just start talking. So, okay, what other topics do we have besides,
Airport was the only thing on written agenda.
all right, we're gonna give Brad a call, see where he's at.
He's on his way.
What, he's on his way?
Well, we have a moment. One of the things that's come up obviously with the Joint Justice Center is parking downtown.
Mhm.
And so, I don't know how we want to address that. I know the judges have expressed some concern that there would be enough parking.
You're talking about once we're open or?
Yeah, just, I mean,
construction?
it's going to cumulatively become more of an issue. And
Yeah,
so,
well.
is that something that,
In theory, the only new people that will be in that building, that aren't in a building near it or around it, are going to be the municipal court people. Our biggest, I think that we have, at least in my opinion, we have adequate parking, however, we don't enforce it very well. The lot across from the new Justice Center on Market Street, I think is filled with a lot of non-county related vehicles. I know our lot is filled with a lot of non-county related vehicles, so I guess we just have to be a little stricter in how we enforce things. Can you think of any other parking that would be there besides the municipal court that isn't there now?
No, other than a few of, but they're in and out, and that's the probation folks that are now gonna come in and be housed with juvenile in the annex that aren't now because he doesn't have the space for them.
I anticipate them to all be parking where they're parking now though, so I don't think that's gonna change much at the location.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are parking
In here.
back here anyway, just because the parking by juvenile probate is not great.
Yeah.
So I don't honestly see that changing much. I can see them kind of stick, because a lot of them like being this way away from everybody else.
And they're using the county cars, so they're parking here, taking the county
Exactly.
cars and going. I know we had John go through about the spots a while back, as well as we went back to talking to other departments about getting the sticker to have in your car that you're a county employee, so that we could start the enforcement, and I think we're gonna have to start the enforcement. I see it repeatedly in the RTA, people pop in there and they park, and I watch them cross the street off to wherever they're going, and there's, once you put some employees in there, there's not many and that's a building that's got people in and out more routinely daily, as much as the new courthouse will. And so I know we have that, like you said, same issue with the Hanson, what we call the old Hanson lot, where that building used to sit right across on Market there. And we're gonna have to make sure we're keeping when the jurors come and when there's a couple of grand jury trials, that kind of stuff, we're gonna need all the parking we can get for those folks.
Yeah, it'll certainly be a different configuration, but you're right, I mean, parking downtown is definitely a problem.
okay. While we had
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring it up because it's been brought up to me a couple times.
Okay, let's talk about the airport. So the fact is that we had a grant that we could have applied for this year, but we decided that, are we still going to be applying for it, or we missed the date on that? Tanya?
We have the pre-app in, we've had to modify it a couple times and never actually got to get the final paperwork in on that modification because of some of the issues we were having through that process. As of the last verbal conversation with the FAA, we had verbally told them we were probably going to pass that off until next year so we can get all of our ducks in a row to get a better application around. We will not lose any entitlement money by doing that. They just need something formal from us in writing, which, did you end up bringing
Yes, I
that
did.
with
I
you?
have it with me.
So we can finalize that process.
Okay, well, why don't we just, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, and I thought it would be helpful if, between Jeff, right? Yeah, I thought I had the name right, I'm gonna say that wrong. And Brad did give us a little overview update too, in whatever order, about that 10-year plan, and then it has the 5-year component of it and that kind of stuff, because I know when Brad and I were talking, that was key to understanding how we can you know, with knowing that vision and where we're going, what we need to make sure we hit and how it does, what impacts what.
Well, I just want to make sure that we're all rolling in the same direction, because we want to do whatever we can do for Brad to help that situation out there and get it in the right direction. So Jeff, go ahead, you can,
Thank you.
I put together a status of where everything is as of today. This is also on the drive if you want to copy it over. Brad, I'm sorry I didn't bring enough copies for everyone. Quite frankly, when I go to these meetings, usually there's not these many people sitting there.
Takes a lot of people to keep an eye on us.
First of all, let's hit the 2015 project, which was the first project that we did for you all. This was the one where you requested reimbursement from the FAA for the closing on the, is it Thai property?
Tice.
Property. Of course, that's done. You've been reimbursed by the FAA for that. As part of that project, oh, you've got it up there, good. As part of that project, the FAA did require that you prepare an Exhibit A property map. That has been completed and that's been submitted to you, as a copy to you and also to the FAA for the review. We've had no comments yet from the FAA, which is not unusual. They are pretty swamped and I imagine it's going to be several months before they get around to giving us any comments on that. Although I don't think there should be any because we had Hank's surveying helping us out do the survey of the existing airport property on there. Also included in that project was the airport layout plan update. We have completed that. I actually reviewed it last week. The only thing I asked our guys to do is make a couple changes in the property lines, the existing proposed airport property lines, so that they stand out better on the drawing that was prepared by Richland Engineering, your former consultant. And I tried to get that done last night to bring it up with me today, but I was unable to get that done because we were working primarily on this other map here. In any event, that will be submitted. We'll get that to you this week, and we'll get it set up to the FAA for their review on that. Essentially, all they wanted there was they just wanted to update your existing airport layout plan set so that showed all the existing situation out there, all the existing pavement, the trees that have been removed, any new buildings, and the latest thinking on property lines. So that has been done. We'll get it up to the FAA, and that should be the end of that. And then the only other thing on that project was the wildlife hazard assessment. This is a 2-3 day study by a special airport biologist on airport wildlife, and with some general recommendations on how you might try to mitigate any wildlife activity at the airport. That report was done, it was submitted to the FAA, but again, we're in the situation where we're waiting for the FAA to comment on it. The 2016 ODOT project, my understanding is that everything's been done on that but sealing and marking. And when we called the contractor to find out what their schedule was a few weeks ago, they said they were waiting on approval from the county to seal the runway. Are they going to be sealing the runway too?
It's part of the contract we have in place, isn't it?
It wasn't part of our. It wasn't part of the ODOT project.
It wasn't had anything to do with. They're mixing two projects up. The 2016 they put the blacktop down. Became November. They had freezing nights, so they didn't seal it,
Right.
and they put temporary markings down. So in essence, they have not finished the 2016 project.
this is a runway project,
This is the
That's correct.
taxiway,
Yeah.
taxiway.
or really the ramp,
Really.
area.
Yeah.
And so have they asked for a partial payment or anything, Jeff? I don't.
Oh yeah, they've been
Yes.
paid for what they've done.
Yes.
Yeah.
What they did last year
Okay.
is
Yeah.
been paid.
So
But I think what they're trying to do is show up and finish the 16 and do what you authorized the airport to do in 17
right.
and just be there one time. I don't think that's quite, it isn't working very well.
Okay, who is that?
MMB.
Because we approved sealing for the.
Yeah, see, we didn't know anything about sealing the runway. We were wondering why they hadn't gotten back on the job yet, and when we called them, they said, yeah, they were waiting for authorization or something to do the runway, because they wanted to do, as Brad said, they wanted
We
to move
approved
in
it,
one
right?
time and get
Oh,
everything.
and
Yeah,
I
part of-
called
I mean,
Tim Bell,
yeah.
and Tim knows it.
Okay, well, part of the reason that we're doing this is to make sure that we're following up on things. So we will make sure that this office calls M&B and says, we are waiting for the rest of that to get completed. And we want to make doggone sure you start plenty of time that we don't run into another. We can't do it because it's too code situation.
Well, in all fairness to the contractor, by the time we got the ODOT grant, it was late in the year. We didn't start till end of October, I think, on the paving.
Okay,
So
well, I
we
mean-
were already getting into bad weather.
Jeff, do we have any chance of ODOT getting upset on the project, the 2006 project? Because their fiscal year is going to come up. They're holding the grant open and they've already authorized 17 work.
Yeah, they haven't called us yet, Brad, to tell us, hey, we need to wrap this up and close out the project. We still have plenty of time, it's plenty of good weather to get this done. They only need a day, 2 days to do all the sealing out there and marking stuff.
What's
Yeah.
that?
I said, I remember them
Yeah,
saying
it's
like
2
2
days.
days.
Two, you know,
Okay,
a
I just
day
want-
to seal
And then a
and,
day
and,
to stripe.
and Zimmerman's, who they contracted with to do the striping.
Okay.
I mean,
I just want to make sure there isn't any excuse that we didn't authorize something. So we'll make certain.
the
that-
state grant, there is no excuse except their schedule.
Okay.
And
Okay.
you authorized the preventative maintenance for 17.
Well, I heard him say that they're waiting for us to approve
No.
it.
Well, this was a couple weeks ago when we talked to them,
It was
so,
approved a couple weeks ago,
okay,
too.
okay.
And
So-
I called Tim and said, get us on the schedule. And he
Okay.
said, I will. So
We'll
that-
follow
We
up
talked
also when we
to
get
them.
back to the office today.
Alright.
I'll have someone make a call up there and talk to them and find out what their schedule is for everything then.
Okay.
On the proposed 2017 project, the project was to acquire, originally the project was to acquire a piece of property to the east of the runway, and we added in a couple additional pieces of property. And then there was a question about whether we were going to be able to begin negotiations with the first property owner out there in time to get everything ready for a grant this year. And so we ended up adding these other two properties in. We came to find out, actually, the property is Mr. Newman's property. We got a call from Mr. Herney reminding us or pointing out to us that there was an access problem where if the county bought those properties that we had talked about with Brad and Tanya at the airport back when we were formulating the project, that it would actually end up with a access problem. So we talked about the access for a while. We actually contacted the FAA about it and asked them if they would have problems with any kind of a temporary access. And, you know, working with the FAA is never fast. They wanted to schedule a conference call where they could have the planner, the environmental person, your program manager, who's the engineer for the airport, all on board with you guys. And we actually had a couple of those conference calls, and as Tanya mentioned, the last one we had, they basically said, hey, we recommend that you just delay the project until next year, finish doing whatever you need. They want to come up and they want to see the airport, they want to see the property, see what the access issue is. They are concerned, we've recommended that they consider purchasing the entire property to be able to alleviate and remove the access issue, the temporary access issue.
Well, let me get the time frame of this right. We were on a phone call 6 weeks ago with the FAA.
If not longer, I don't know what the-
Okay, maybe longer. It was a Thursday because it was at one of the joint justice center meetings, and I went out on the phone and got on the call. And we had a call since that time. Okay. And was there any follow-up to that previous call? Did they make any progress, or did we have the same conversation?
No, we kept kind of emailing them saying, because they were supposed to get back to us that following week and they did not. So we had reached out to them saying, you know, hey, what's going on? You know, we kind of need your answer. Because if their answer was, yeah, go ahead, we'll buy the whole parcel, Jeff was going to modify the paperwork and we were all set to go.
Okay.
But when they finally came back on the phone, they said, nah, we don't know if we really want that. We don't know if that really fits in our goals. So they want to come out and view it to see exactly how those access issues affect us.
What they've actually told us is that they're not sure that there's justification for acquisition of the entire parcel. And this is despite the fact that if you buy the part of it that you actually need, it landlocks the rest of the parcel. I'm flabbergasted that they don't see that and don't understand it. what I think is a problem is they have some kind of a plan, whether it's the former airport layout plan, they have some kind of a plan in their office that they're looking at that shows an eventual road coming up and connecting to the property from the east. And I don't think they understand that that is not Brad's property. That's someone else's property. Brad does not have access. He did not purchase all the property down to the east where the roads are located. And I think that's why I think the FAA wants to come up and see for themselves
Okay,
where the property is located.
If the FAA, for whatever reason, says that we can't buy that property, do we have a plan in place for an easement? The most probable and most likely access?
There is no plan in place. There have been a lot of discussions back and forth with the FAA on what they might accept and what they might not. I understand there were some discussions also possibly with the county engineer, is that correct?
Yeah.
About what he would be
Do we-
willing to allow?
Since we're on easements, are there any temporary easements out there that we need to clean up? Are there, I mean, I think that, we've talked about a few things about being able to get to places, and I think part of the pushback from the engineer, at least my sense, is that we've done some things temporarily that we've never finished up to either make them permanent or to move them to a permanent site. So is there anything out there right now?
Those are not county easements.
Those are, what kind of easements are they?
Well, that's not, there was, let me say this again. There was lot splits that happened in anticipation of other things happening. So there weren't
Okay.
necessarily, is that right, Brad? There wasn't any actual easements granted in the purchasing or the splits. There's
Oh.
been some, if
There's
you could help
only
me.
one easement that I know of that was back in with the Smelts concrete plant. That is the only easement that
Okay.
was
True
granted.
easement, yeah.
True, okay.
Everything else is, the engineer has allowed in anticipation of the advancement of things happening.
Well, I just
Was-
want to make sure there's a big picture here that, the Newmans and previous owners have done a lot on their own personally and have a lot of investment in our property, basically. And we need to find a way to make certain that we don't landlock them, and that we make certain that we comply with all the FAA needs, at the same time considering the Newman's position, because they have been such good operators over the years, and we don't want to put them in a position where they're harmed.
Right. I went ahead and put together a map in anticipation of possibly talking about it. What we're talking about is this property right here. The original property we're talking about is what's called parcel E2, which is part of Brad's property, and also E3, which is from a property owner that owns this property down here, and that's a 1 acre parcel. And the purpose of buying these properties is to protect the airspace, Part 77 surfaces that the FAA has around the airport. And Mr. Newman has done an excellent job of purchasing property to remove trees to remove obstructions from the
So
approach.
that's at the south end of the runway?
This is the east end here.
The
That's
east end.
at the south,
The
these are at the
southeast
south end
corner.
on the each side.
Okay.
And Mr. Newman owns this property right here approximately. These are approximate locations
Right.
of lines. And what we're talking about doing is buying these two parcels up here, which there's one called parcel G, which is 5 feet wide and runs the entire length here. And then it widens out and goes past the end of the runway, almost touching the runway pavement, out to 224. And the point is, if we buy this and buy parcel F, which is the little wider one that's located just to the east of that, there's no way, we take away this, so there's no way for the Newmans to get into the property. So what we talked about with the FAA is coming up the road here off of Driftwood,
Yeah.
Yeah.
where it's just to the north of where the Theis property was that you acquired, and allowing Mr. Newman access from that road. But the problem is right here, there's a really narrow, it narrows down, the property line gets so close to what we would be buying
Right.
that it's not wide enough for proper access. So what we talked about in the first telephone conversation with the FAA is, would they allow a temporary easement back onto the property that they were buying, pending them coming up with money in the future to buy the remaining property down here. And they said they'd prefer not to have access on there. And I pointed out, would you rather have this access past the end of the runway, which in my opinion is much more of a safety issue, or allow them temporary access on here until you buy the rest of the property? And they decided that they had to go talk, you were probably on that call,
Yeah.
they wanted to go talk to the management and find out. Well, when we had our subsequent call a few weeks ago, they came back and said they had their call with management. Management does not see any reason to buy this property. And I'm so flabbergasted because I thought we had told them and explained them very well why the county needed to own that property. We had even told them that there were trees on that property that were obstructions, and they didn't seem to care because they were 7-to-1 obstructions instead of approach obstructions. But that's what the reason why when we talked to them last time, they decided they wanted to come down and look. They are convinced, I think, that Brad actually owns this land down in here. And that, on the maps we have, is labeled as a different property owner. And the FAA is looking at this road in here and possibly some kind of an extension, but it does not go up to the Newman property as far as I know. Again, I haven't seen exactly what they have, but I think they need to see it for themselves. In my opinion, there's not going to be any problems. I believe the FAA will ultimately agree that that is a property that's needed and agree to fund it. In the meantime, our recommendation is that the county continue to work towards the acquisition of these properties. We have appraisals. Appraisal's been done. It's at the reviewer's office, and they're waiting on a decision by the FAA on how to handle this easement, this access easement question. And once that's answered, either by agreeing to allow you to purchase the entire property or by allowing you to get some kind of an easement across other locations on the airport to get the property. Once that's resolved, then the reviewer can complete his work. Any changes to the appraisals can be done by the appraisal then, and the county can go ahead and proceed with negotiations.
What, part of Brad's property, part of the Newman's property there on the northeast, towards northeast, is a white area, kind of down,
Here?
no, I'm
At
sorry,
the end of the runway.
northeast.
Oh, down in here.
No, overloft down.
Southeast.
Southeast, over
No,
here.
that's, no, here.
I should give you this.
Yeah, what is this right here?
Brad, that's just a vacant field, is it not?
There's no trees growing, it's just sand? or-
I have taken the trees out.
Okay.
And then the, right next to it that's green, we do farm that.
This-
Only so I don't have to mow it.
That triangle? Yeah.
So the
But the
prop-
real concern is the black there, Mike, right in front of the runway that,
This?
no,
No.
right there.
Oh, this.
Yeah, that's the,
Brad, and I need, the county needs to own that regardless.
yeah, and I
So
think.
that was my access before regional planning put a 60-foot right-of-way or whatever, because after the black there, and then it skinnies down to almost 5 feet,
Right there.
right that little chunk there. But this happened in the 60s,
Well,
when there was no regional
Right here
planning,
is the
and you
problem
did
there,
things
right?
by the, and
Right
prior to
here.
my time.
It narrows down, but if we were to give Brad access to his property
Right.
here, he could get to his property from here because it's all contiguous. But it narrows down right there at that point between what you would be buying and what you would be leaving in.
so who owns this?
Petrosinos.
Who owns the property to the east of that property?
Petrosinos.
The Petrosinos, and then goes around the corner there to Dr. Akers.
Okay.
You know, these trees here, Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe a lot of these trees are probably obstructions. They're 7-to-1 transition
I've
obstructions.
taken some out in the
Because-
last 6 months.
Right, the Brad has cut down trees up to the point just outside of the object-free area, I believe. And so we've got some additional trees in there I think are obstructions. And so, again, I can't believe with all the reasons to buy the property that the FAA is going to balk at it. So,
But
we-
in the meantime, we have to deal with this stranded parcel of,
right now, the only thing first of all, right now, I did prepare a letter, and I brought it, it's on, a copy in Word is on the disk, my jump drive there. but I brought a copy of the letter. The FAA requested a letter from you asking them to carry over your funding for use next year.
Okay,
And you will end up having roughly 500, almost $600,000 in non-primary money next year. I think it's like, it's on my notes here.
Part of that grant was the tree removal and the road
Yeah.
removal, right? So
The other part of the
deferring
project-
that.
The other part of the project this year was to remove trees on the Tice property and also on the Olson property if you were to acquire it. But when the FAA pulled the plug on the land acquisition, the estimate on clearing the trees on the Ty property just wasn't enough for them to be able to issue a
So there's a
grant.
minimum
Yes.
on
The
their
FAA
grant
does
here?
not consider anything less than $25,000. It's too much work for them to
but
issue a grant.
just to make, I'm sorry, go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, I mean, this is just all news to me.
And then with
Okay.
the whole talk of easement, that Tice, the Tice's driveway or the road on Tice's property in our proposal to the FAA could be, if they don't let us buy everything, could be the access points. We didn't want to move forward with that either till we figured out exactly what they're gonna want us to do.
Yeah.
Right, and they want us to look at it before they make a decision.
Okay,
So
I mean,
so we could possibly sell them Newman's a drive access through the Tice property.
Well, we
Is
were
that-
offering that, but they weren't biting on it.
They were okay with that. What they were not biting on is giving any kind of an easement back over land that they were paying to buy, that you were buying with their funds. In other words, where that point narrows down there, you would have to give a little bit of additional easement over the land that you're buying on parcel F for them to get past that narrow spot.
Okay, it's important for a little historical perspective here too, I think, because I don't want this to be misconstrued. That land that the Newmans own adjacent to the airport has been owned for protection of the airport
Right.
for years. Brad, how many years? I mean, you didn't even buy it, did you? Dwight did?
No,
back
yeah,
in the day?
in the mid-60s.
In the mid-60s. So this is not like a situation, I just don't want you to misconstrue it, where the Newmans are trying to sell the county some land that is, just because it's part of the airport. The fact is that that land was bought to protect the airport.
Right.
Back in the day.
And it's
And that
reimbursed.
there was always a plan
Yeah.
that the county would eventually own that property to make certain that there was plenty of room there for expansion and for proper right of way. So, I just wanted to be clear that this is something we've been discussing for a number of years. And it was purchased and sat on for all these years for no good reason other than to help the county out in the future.
Well, there were other things that needed to be done at the airport. And land reimbursement and land acquisition
Right.
by the county is not the highest priority when you're looking at maintaining pavements and lighting systems.
Right, but I mean, again, from a historical perspective, at the time, there were trees on part of that property, there were all kinds of things that obstructed the runway, so it was
Right.
necessary to get that bought when it was available, so that it would be okay for us to do the expanses that we've done at that airport.
So, bottom line is the FAA has scheduled a trip down here August 14th.
17th.
17th, August 17th.
They're proposing 10 a.m. Brad, does that work for you?
Yeah, I'll make it work.
And
will
we'll
let
probably
them know.
want to take them out there and give them a tour, go down by the road there by the driftwood and take them in that way, let them see it. Let them see the trees from the airport side. Let them see the current access to that property past the end of the runway. Show them this drawing so that they can see for themselves where the property lines are located. And hopefully at that point, we'll have a better idea with them, some kind of a plan with them on how to proceed with the acquisitions. And then at that point, I think we need to continue to work towards getting an agreement with both property owners so that when we come to this point next year, we've got the agreements already signed, ready to go, like you had with Mrs. Tice. And all we're doing is waiting on the federal funds for being able to close.
And we also have to satisfy the engineer that we're not creating landlocked parcels.
Right.
Which if they purchase everything, then that issue is null and void.
Right, that goes away.
It's not an issue.
Right. Now, I will say that, as you indicated, Commissioner, the current airport layout plans do show the acquisition of most of these properties out here that were purchased for protection of the airport. The one part that does not show on the current plan was this additional part down here. And that's the reason why we're having this
Right.
issue now. It wasn't shown on the original plan, and we have to convince the FAA as to why that is important that we acquire.
But, you know, again, you know, if it wasn't bought back in the 60s, there probably would have been development. And then we would have had a whole other situation where we'd had to buy houses and we'd have to take trees down. and
Right.
All those kind of things. And if you'd have planted a tree there in 1960, it'd have been too tall at this point, then it would have had to come down in the first place.
Right.
So, I mean, I think there has to be some consideration made that it was an anticipatory move to make sure that we were protecting what we had.
Right, and we'll have to point all this out when they come down to meet with us.
Can you identify the parcels for 2018, the E2, E3, F, G?
Sure. Again, this right here, this is parcel E2,
And that's roughly,
.146 acres. These are all very small properties.
yeah, less than a
This
tenth,
is
2/10
parcel
of an acre.
E3. This is owned by the other property owner, it's 1 acre.
And we don't have an agreement on that at
No,
this point?
no. In fact, we don't have appraisals that have been accepted by the commissioners yet, so it's not even in the public domain at this point. The parcel F is a 5-foot wide strip, I'm sorry, G is a 5-foot wide strip that comes down here, follows the runway, comes out here and then it widens out and goes past the end of the runway out to 224.
That's F and G.
That's G. And then F is the one right next to it, that's a little bit wider, that comes down here, it runs parallel with G, and it stops right here. So
And you
those are
say
the four.
those are those strip properties are essential, why?
This takes you just outside of the runway object-free area, and within that area, you're not supposed to have any objects, other than those fixed by function by the FAA, like light fixtures and nav aids and stuff
Because we
like
need
that.
so many feet from the center of the runway,
Yes,
correct?
yes, it's-
So that gets us to that.
Right, it's a distance over, and again, I don't know who did the original planning on these and laying it out on the plan, but what's shown is absolutely correct. You need to have that, and in fact, more. And I think it's gonna be, you know, part of our job to try to convince the FAA of all the reasons why this needs to be done when they come down here.
Well, and wasn't there, I hate to mention the ugly 5-letter word, but the word fence in one of those long-term plans that they predicted and/or said would come into play down the road?
Well, that, certainly a security fence, but that has to.
Wildlife.
For
Wildlife.
wildlife.
It was wildlife.
Wildlife is the current term to use.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So we needed to be, if we just revert back, Governor Rhodes had no rules. He built a 4,000-foot runway, I think 200 feet would be good enough.
Right.
Mid-'70s, late '70s, the FAA said, we got rules now, 250 feet. We didn't have that. We had maybe,
Right.
in certain areas, 200, maybe. So now we needed 50, and we just keep attacking. We got the other side of the runway, the other red line on the other side of the runway taken care of. We've purchased the homes, and when we went to slide to 250 on the south side, I had acquired the property years ago. In fact, it was when Dwight had it, but I couldn't shift it to the county because of the taxiway was in the wrong place. We had numerous issues. Now we're at the point, and now regional planning says I don't have 60 foot, but I never did. So I'm struggling between selling the county some property and already putting an easement on it to get the 60 foot to make regional planning happy. So, and we just can't get it
So I'll match up.
so it all matches up with everybody's restrictions. That's,
So where the narrow part is for that easement, we can't go towards the runway because then that would be in the free zone. So, I mean, we can't, obviously we can't buy other people's property to the east, but we can't widen it out any towards the runway, or that gets us into a restricted area?
That's the FAA's position, is that they don't want to pay for property and then end up permitting you to have access for someone to get to their property on the property they bought. And again, I pointed out to them, well, what would you rather have? A little bit of an easement right in here to
Yeah,
get
right,
around?
yeah.
Or would you rather have this in place? Because you can't get rid of both.
Yeah.
There's, you know, they did suggest though, just so you know, they did suggest trying to get some kind of
Yeah, that's what you said.
access in there. And we pointed out, well, do you really have the right to buy property to have access put in for someone else?
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of ramifications here, and I just don't think the FAA understands all the ramifications.
Well, it's so easy because that stub is already in place.
Right here.
Yeah. I mean,
And that's why
so,
we, yeah.
I mean, if you could put adequate width in those roads, there's no reason not to.
Well, the solution here is to buy the entire
Right,
property.
right, right.
That is the solution.
And that's what you're referring to
Yes.
as you.
Yes, that's what we did a search when we did the uptake on the ELP. There was no property U listed. It skipped from T to, it skipped U, basically, and went around U. So we figured, well, we'll just go ahead and call that U for now and see if the FAA buys it. But in any event, we have listed this as parcel U. So our recommendation is to continue on and convince the FAA of the need to just go ahead and buy all this. There's 3 reasons to buy land. Compatible land use is one of them. Brad mentioned that, or you mentioned that if you didn't get that back when it was gotten, that there could be houses on it. Now, you'd be dealing with trying to buy houses, which you don't want. We don't want that happening in the future either. So compatible land use, obstruction removal, there are obstructions on it, and future development. Now, there's no future development shown for the airport on this property, and it would be very unlikely to happen because you'd have to cross from that side of the field, cross the runway to get to the facility, so.
I mean, we hope Brad and Kim are there forever. But I think that one thing the FAA has to know is that the next owners, wherever they may be a generation from now, may not be so likely to just want to leave that non-income producing piece of property and decide to put a housing development in there, for example. Now we got a problem.
Yeah. And in fact, that is an argument they make with us at other locations on parcels.
Yeah.
They tell us, it's the opposite. They tell us in those cases, you need to buy this land because we don't want future development to come on it. But in your case, they're taking the other position. So I think it's going to shake out when they come down here. I think they're going to see for themselves.
This is 10% match money?
5.
5.
Yeah, there's 5 from the state, 5 from the FAA, and, I'm sorry, 5 from you, 5 from the FAA, 90 from the FAA.
Okay, just one last question. I know they're talking about extending this thing to get to the Newman's property, but what is this road? What is this? Just a fence row?
No, that is a road with a couple homes back in there.
Right.
And I have never asked for an easement from those people or Roger Benz at this point. I thought we could work it out so that I could just not interfere with them. And even if it was an easement and you put it for no construction, I mean, limit it, because all that's gonna happen is for maintenance. That's really all the easement is gonna be
But I mean,
used.
the FAA was talking about doing something here. It looks to me like there's something there already.
And maybe that's the one they're looking at. Maybe they're wondering to know why that can't be extended out. Again,
Brad,
until
it's been
we
praised.
meet with them, we need to have this meeting, roll up our sleeves and figure this out.
The appraisal has been done on the small reds and Mr. and Mrs. Olson's property. It's in for review. I'm concerned, since it got delayed, and you can correct me, that the appraisals will be outdated by 18.
Well, we're not gonna wait till 18.
I was saying, as
Our
long
recommendation is to keep going. Once we have the meeting with the FAA, our recommendation is to proceed from that point as
But
if there was no
you
delay.
hasn't been appraised.
Yes, it has.
It has.
It has only because the FAA requires a before and after valuation. And when they do the before, they have to look at the entire contiguous property. That is the before value. And then what they do is they figure the after value, which would be just the part remaining after you take the part that you need. And the difference is what you owe the property owner. So the before has already been done. It's the price of the entire property. So we have both.
And Brad, you're interested in selling the entire unit?
Why? I think it's the right thing to make the county grow at the airport.
Right. Yeah, all right.
Okay.
From my perspective, I'm interested in buying you, but, does it?
But you're gonna
any
need
support
funding. I think the
For us
most
to take
im-
motion in session does it?
We need to talk to the FAA,
Yeah,
I think, on the
Yeah.
17th.
After that meeting.
Because what if they don't say they want any more, like he said, right now they're bucketed. I really think that easement needs to be in place, whether we attack it from Roger Benz or that street, or we get an agreement with the prosecutor to,
My first choice would be to go through the Tice property, but that's me.
if you can get through
We'll
there.
definitely need another planning session after,
Yeah.
I think, the 17th with the FAA to based on what they say, to, again, attack this and, like Jeff said, keep working. You know, hopefully in a perfect world, they agree with us and we can just get these purchase agreements in place by the end of the year, and then all those prices are good, and then we're pretty much sitting in a position, we're just waiting for them to release the grants.
Are you both in favor of buying you?
Well, yes, I am. I mean, given
Yeah.
the correct circumstances and knowing the history of this thing, yes. The alternative, real quick, I know we're on a time crunch here. The alternative, worst case, FAA says, no, you're not gonna buy that. Give me some type of an idea, Brad, as to what it's worth. Yeah, I mean, do we know, have any, round figure between X?
I have not seen the appraisals
Okay.
on, because Mr. Olson's back acre is kind of like mine, it just exists.
Okay.
You know, it isn't, and
Or, the other alternative, of course, when you talk about land is, then if we can't get it bought, would you lease it to the county? For an extended period of time, I'm talking about, 50 years, as part of the airport to come up with some compensation for you for that lease. Those are the only alternatives I can consider at this point, knowing what we got going on.
I think we need, there's too many alternatives
Okay.
here. I think we need to meet with the FAA and fine tune what the actual options that they're willing to permit are. And at that point, then we meet again and we'll take action on whichever ends up being the one that we want to proceed.
I just think that, we need to have Plan B in the event that we don't get the answer we want, and that we all agree to Plan B, whatever that might be.
and we can also do the small and Mr. Olson's if they say no, and figure out an easement and then ask for this in 2020. I think if it's in place, would you agree, Jeff? And they knew about it, the brakes don't go on.
Right, the other thing is, in order for any of your project to be eligible for federal participation, it has to be shown on an airport layout plan. That parcel is not currently shown on the approved airport layout plan. It is on our new plan, but it wasn't on the old plan. So I think that's why, all these things are conspiring to work against us. We just need to resolve this stuff with the FAA. What I'd like to do moving forward, and Tanya and I have talked about this quite extensively, we need to be a little bit more, we need to do a little bit better planning before we actually move into the project cycle, so that we know what we're going to do this year, and we know what we're going to do the year after next year, so that we have all this time to get all this stuff done, because dealing with the FAA takes time, and, you have all the conference calls you have to have with them to get their approval on what you're going to do. And sometimes that doesn't take place till March or April, and then you're up against a June or July deadline. And I say deadline, their deadline this year was June 30th, but that's not really the deadline. That is the date that the FAA has to know whether you're going to do a project or not. And they knew that we were going to do a project here, so that deadline came and went, no problems. The real deadline is September 30th. That is the end of the fiscal year for the federal government. And any grants that aren't signed and accepted by September 30th, the money goes away. So the FAA, when we had our last call a couple weeks or so ago, they scratched their heads and they said, hey, it doesn't look like we have enough time to resolve this issue yet and still be able to get an agreement with the property owners, still be able to get bids in on the tree removal and everything. So let's just carry the money over to next year. You guys keep working on it, and we'll meet with you and we'll decide what we're going to do, and then we'll move forward.
Okay. In respect for time for other people, let's move on to the meeting here.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
We appreciate it.
And I said, we'll make sure after the meeting on the
Thank you.
17th, now do you want one of us, do we want to designate?
I
just
think
wanna
it would
make
be
sure
good.
the communications stay going between Brad and you and our office and, that meeting, if, I don't know, if the chairman wants to be the
Well, it's-
designated
yeah, I mean-
commissioner to be part of it or whatever, but I want to make sure we keep those communications so that we all stay on the same page, and then we'll come back to a session here.
Once we get some
if
guidance,
we
once we get the guidance from them, absolutely.
get it
I would
scheduled
like to see
soon
one of the
after.
commissioners at the meeting with the FAA to again push them towards what we want to do, which is to end up with that property for protection of the airport.
Right,
So
absolutely.
I think it means more to them to have the locals involved than it does talking to us or to Brad.
Okay, so I will participate in that meeting on the 17th, just keep me in the loop and let me know what's going on.
Okay.
The other thing, small, is that we really need Plan B, and I will try to work with Roger Benz or if that's a township road or whatever, just so I can take the county out of the picture for an easement, and it may cost something, but it'll be burdened by the.
Brad, I would ask only you hold off till after we meet with the FAA, because it may end up being a wasted effort. If the FAA says, yeah, we see it now, we'll go ahead and participate, we understand it's for the best of the airport, and then there's no reason to talk to anyone. So if you could just wait, it's only a couple more weeks before the meeting. If you could just wait,
60 days.
hopefully we'll have this all worked out when the FAA comes down and visits the airport.
Yeah, I doubt it, though.
I like the optimism.
Don't seem to resolve.
I like the optimism.
Yeah, I
Hope
do
you're right.
too, but
I think we'll get it.
We
I
do
think-
have a new sponsor. It's Mark Grinnell.
Program manager is
Program
Mark
manager, excuse
Grinnell.
me. He seems
Mary,
to be-
did you know that? Mary got switched. They play musical chairs up there every so often. They don't like the program managers getting too chummy with the various airports, so they rotate them around. In this case, we ended up, we have two program
Sounds like
managers
fighters.
retiring up there. So they brought someone else new and they're rotating.
Our
around.
line is that we use a number of times, is the difference between regulators and terrorists, is at least terrorists are willing to negotiate. Yeah.
But he seems he has been a lot quicker to respond
Yes.
Hey,
than Mary was. I'm
One
really
last
happy
thing
with
to clear up
communication so far with Mark,
the
so
fence
fingers
issue.
crossed.
It's object-free to 250. How tall is the fence?
At 250?
No,
higher.
how tall would,
A wildlife fence has to be 10 foot high with a foot of barbed
so
wire
that
on
means
top
we need to be.
and
the
3
pro-
feet in the ground.
Brad, that's like one of those old algebra questions. We have 250 clear, how tall does the fence have to be?
It's gotta be 70 foot 7 to 1.
Yeah.
You gotta be 70 foot
how far you
further
can.
than the 250. So
Actually,
we're-
77,
We're out to
right.
320, and that's why I'm trying to
Yeah.
get this
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it ever comes about, you're covered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure I remember this, or either you point that out to them or I'll point it out. to them.
'Cause now
There's
we
all
can't-
kinds of reasons for buying additional property out
So
here.
where would the fence have to be on the west side then? Behind the
thing.
building?
Yeah, oh, no, it should be at the back side of the buildings. You should separate the auto traffic from the aviation. The airfield and land side should be separate if
Or is
there's
there
any
any,
way to
is
do
there
it.
any problem with that side then if the fence ever needs to go? Anything we don't
Not
know?
with me,
No? Okay.
and not with the property that the company owns, but there could be a small issue with the concrete plant.
Okay. All right, we gotta get.
Okay.
Do you have a couple business cards for the
I do.
You guys ready? Lock on, all that stuff? Okay. There's no reason to be stiff then. I'm a clear.
Oh,
Good man.
Commissioners meeting.
You're all right. Go. Your time's up.
Thanks for letting me know.
You're all right,
No, this is Tuesday, July 31st. August 1st.
August 1st.
Again, that letter is in that file. Did you copy the letter? Okay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag.
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The light.
Okay.
The light.
Light back on. Please join me in a short prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this wonderful day. Thank you for great weather for the fair that we had. We ask that you watch over all of us, especially those that are protecting our freedoms and their families. We ask all this through your Son, our Lord. Amen. All right, roll call.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Here.
Commissioner Thomas?
Here.
Commissioner Seaver?
Here.
I'll accept a motion to approve the digital audio video recording of the previous board session from Tuesday. That's when it was, Tuesday, July 25th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I assume that is approved. We all agree. Yes. Okay, adjustments, any adjustments to old business or new business?
I have none.
Anybody have any additions? No? Okay, then, I guess there are no other,
Just go to commercial and retail.
right, than on the new business side of the appropriation, right? Okay, we have Mirchu Handru here to talk about mental health and recovery. What What would you like to discuss?
What's on your mind?
I'm coming to ask you guys to consider our levy as a necessity for the November 7 ballot. We had the mental health levy in Seneca County since 2008. Voters renewed it in 2012. Unfortunately, to Ohio Department of Taxation opinion, we are unable to place this issue on a ballot again as a renewal this November. Our board already passed the resolutions, were submitted to Secretary of State. The issue was already on a ballot, but we canceled it last week because of Ohio Department of Taxation opinion. So we're asking for you guys to proceed, actually to declare it a necessity this week and proceed with the resolution next week on August the 8th, so we can have it filed with the local board of election by the deadline, which is August 9th.
Richard, for your, since the Department of Taxation has seen that the way it was being handled is now not going to work, does it, even though you had the renewal in 12, does it force you to call it a new levy, even though we know it's not? It's in our minds, it's a replacement. Instead of doing it this way, we're doing it this way, which means it has to come through the county, and it didn't have to before. Is that what, I mean?
We have fought for that, and they are not allowing us to do that. They are not allowing us to call either a replacement or a renewal. Unfortunately, the taxpayers are going to see it as an additional tax.
As additional, but obviously in your promotion and or the groups that will support the, I guess you're directly your board, but your supporters that will promote the passage of the tax would be able to educate folks to say this, because the 2012 renewal will be done. That's the reason you were going to go for a new renewal, but you can't. Okay.
That is correct. We will do our best, obviously, through the board and various groups and leaders to help us get the message out. Really, this new levy will replace the current levy. So no point we are going to have to tax the taxpayers twice. Like this
Yeah.
Same dollars will be generated?
Will be not quite, will be very similar. As a board, we tried our best to match it. The current levy is a 0.8 mil. The new levy will be a 0.7 mil.
So you're reducing the mills to the taxpayers?
We're reducing them, we're trying to bring them as a board as level as we could. It's not really the same because when the levy initially passed in 2008, the way the calculations were done brought $1 amount in. So now, this being a new levy would be a whole new calculations by the county auditor.
Right.
But actual dollar, 7 cents is close to what 8 cents was then.
That is correct. That is correct, Commissioner, yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, you know, Mental Health Board is at the epicenter, if you will, of the opiate crisis, and they're working very hard with this. We need to make certain that they continue to be funded in the county, without question. We want to make it very clear to the citizens of the county that these folks are working very, very hard at this, and that everyone that I know in law enforcement and the judicial system has absolute full support of their efforts. And it's important to come up with a marketing plan to say that this really is not a new tax. It may be defined as that, but it looks like a duck. I mean, it's exactly the same as it was before. It's funding a similar amount of money. There is no new additional tax, if you will. So I, for one, am in absolute full support of this, and hopefully we find a way to market it to make folks understand how necessary it is and that it does not increase their burden.
Absolutely, it's definitely a necessity, and I'm confident that the right steps put in place that will be able to educate the voters on that. And you know, I'll be all in support when we have the correct verbiage to do this next session, so that you can proceed to have things in place that, as you need them aligned coming through us.
Yeah, sometimes this board needs to allow things to be on the ballot. What at least I'm doing here, and I think the rest of us, we are enthusiastic about this being on the ballot. So there is a difference.
And so the procedure is we declare a necessity today and then we pass a resolution next week? Is that the procedure?
Do you guys, the way I understand it, you guys are going to declare it a necessity. Julie Atkins from now until next week will give you guys the amounts and rates officially, and then next Tuesday you guys will proceed.
Certified, yeah.
Correct, she will certify it, and you guys will proceed to put it on a ballot.
Yeah, we just need action next week.
So whatever, I think whatever you guys pass today, have to send it to Julie, is my understanding.
Correct. This tells Julie to prepare those documentation, which we will then pass.
And is our verbal agreement, or do we need an actual?
We have a resolution
We
today
do need
and
to
a
pass-
resolution
I just
next
passed
week.
it down.
Okay, gotcha,
We re-signed it.
All right, excellent.
gotcha.
So do you need
how
to
would
read
you-
the resolution?
Yeah, let me
before we do
read it.
Okay, let's go ahead and read that.
All right.
Resolution declaring necessity for levy of taxes in excess of the 10 mil limitation pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 5705.221 and 5705.03.
Okay, I will accept the motion for approval.
So moved?
Second?
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Stacy?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we move on to new business supplemental appropriations.
We have a supplement to the permanent appropriations for the general fund, $1,000 into supplies and $1,000 into other expenses, economic development. And a sub-app into commissary fund, 1028, $122,989 into equipment.
Tanya, is that one that you just did for general fund, was it 1,300 or 1,000?
1,300,
Because you read 1,000.
I'm sorry.
For both of them?
1,300.
Well,
There's 1,000.
1,000 and then a 1,300, and
Yeah.
two.
2,300.
Correct.
Okay.
Resolution authorizing Commissioner Holly M. Stacy to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission state capital improvement and/or local transportation improvement programs and to execute contracts as required for issue 1, round 32 for Seneca County. Resolution authorizing the Seneca County Board of Commissioners to enter into the issue 1, round 32 cooperative agreements with the Seneca County Township Boards of Trustees. Resolution establishing the Medicaid Transitional Aid Fund 1013.
Okay, I'll accept a motion for approval of appropriations.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Stacy?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Yes. All right, I believe it is now time for public input.
Couple quick things.
Okay.
Yes, hit me.
The letter Jeff was just talking about in work session, officially authorizing, rolling the entitlement over to next year so we can get everything in line.
Okay.
If you could sign that, please, so I can
Sure.
get that to the FAA.
Yeah.
And then I just wanted to make note that the August 8th session will start at 10:30, not 10, due to the Attica Fair opening.
Next
Okay.
Tuesday, okay, that's right.
And I know this is very, very far in advance. Yeah, okay, so got that in. That's good. But January, we looked at the calendar, how you weren't available when we were looking at, looked at the calendar for January. There happens to be 5 Tuesdays in January, 2018. And it looks as though at least 2 of us won't be here one of those weeks. So, the week, the 4th Tuesday.
23rd?
I have my calendar.
23rd, yeah, if we can, is that what we decided? Shane?
Yeah, the
We would not
23rd, you have a board
we'd
meeting
have
and a
4
trip,
meetings
yeah.
without doing it on the 23rd. We would still have one on the 30th, and we still have one on the 16th.
We still get one in before later.
Well, our
Yes.
reorganization would happen on Monday, the 8th.
Right.
Yeah,
Right,
so really,
second.
this would all get played out in our reorganizational meeting
I would say
on
we
the
can
8th,
make
but I know
note
Yeah,
that,
okay, I just want
Just
for
for
planning
planning
purposes, and,
purposes,
you both have came forward that you're gonna be gone, so.
yeah, we both realized looking at calendars. that
Hey, I could want to do a meeting all day long, but I can't without.
You don't have anybody to.
I wouldn't be able to do it.
I wouldn't say argue, I'd say.
One of us
discuss
is, one of
things.
us is,
I think the
Yeah.
law changed too on the reorganizational meeting. It has to be on or before the
Second.
or whatever it is. So they
on or
changed.
before the second Monday.
Yeah, as opposed to on. So.
Okay, anything else?
Figure that out.
Right. Okay. Mr. Zach, Mr. Nutter, Mr. Shu.
Very short, I would like to make one more comment. Today is August 1st, and the Seneca County Opioid Task Force and the board, we are sending out to the community a request for proposal. We have received a private donation to Marissa Aaron Paulus Fund for local youth to implement a youth parent and community education project regarding the negative effects of alcohol and other drugs. So youth in the community, schools, youth groups, Boy Scouts, anybody, we encourage them to apply, up to $1,500 per group, and the application deadline is September 30th, 2017. We'll get this to the media as well as on our website and to all the schools.
Perfect,
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes, Mr. Zapp.
So we had our, excuse me, our second member briefing for SIDC last week. Went really well. I just sent out an update yesterday, so all the commissioners should have received kind of a summary of how that went, along with our new resource directory that we're going to be using when we talk to all the businesses in the county about the 150, 200 public resources that are out there, from consulting to grants and tax credit, things that are relevant to business, because we believe our highest priority is to help those businesses that are here throughout Seneca County. Continue to work on the spec building and the industrial park expansion. Continues to go well. We also updated on the branding, which we had some in-depth workshops last week, and it continues to go very well. That's targeted to be completed by the end of the year. There's going to be continual communication involvement along the way, and appreciate the county's support on that important initiative. We are ready to launch this year's Blitz of reaching out to all the existing businesses. We had worked with many up until this point. There's usually a window of several months in which we do really active calling to touch base and see how's it going, you looking to grow, and how we can help. So that's going to be going on in the next few months, probably kicking off next week. Other than that, when we did present the member briefing, we were able to track 50 projects for the first half of the year so far, of companies that are investing or companies that are hiring new jobs. And we're also looking forward to the next few weeks to be able to make at least one large announcement, which I think will make the community very pleased. So we're very excited about what's going on. Always appreciate the county's support and continue to work hard to create this place where businesses want to grow and invest, and a great place to live.
Thank you, Mr. Zack. Any questions? Mr. Nutter, anything today?
No.
Well, it's good to see you. Welcome.
Yeah, I just thought I'd stop by. I actually need to see Shane.
Well, it's always good to see you again.
Thank you.
Okay, nothing from the press today? Ronnie, I'm kind of disappointed.
Well, I want
We
to
were
make
so
sure.
close, Mike.
I know. Yeah, had to open your mouth, didn't you? This is 53, is that correct?
That is, no, 53
That's
is further
51, I think.
east.
No, 51's off the side.
Yeah, 53 is further east. 224 is running.
What road is this then?
That's 53.
That might be 50.
Is it 53?
Yeah, that's 53.
That's 53.
So it is 53.
You stand corrected,
Yes.
that is 53.
Okay,
Going south.
and then what you had pointed to over more toward the left,
Yeah.
that's just private drives right now? Is that
Yeah,
right?
well, it's, I think it's probably a lane or a fence route.
Okay.
There's nothing, it's not paved.
It's nothing that we own that we
Right.
can offer an easement
Right,
from.
okay.
That's the issue, is everything around Brad's property, the county doesn't own, so it's not an
Right.
easy
It looked
answer.
like, the only reason I say anything, Ron, is because where the FAA might be proposing looked like a
Yeah.
whole lot longer shot
Access from there.
than, when that was. And I
Right.
don't know exactly where that's at. It's tough for me to tell with an aerial shot, but.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. We are adjourned.
I guess